The streets of our neighborhood never slept, though it felt like they were perpetually shrouded in twilight. The glow from the occasional street lamp did little to dispel the darkness that seemed to settle into the very fabric of our lives. My name is Martin, and growing up here was a lesson in enduring hardships and finding small moments of hope in the midst of struggle. My mother, Elena, worked tirelessly, her hands roughened from years of scrubbing other people's floors and sewing for a meager paycheck. My father, Robert, was a factory worker, often returning home so late that we barely saw him. Despite his exhaustion, he tried to keep a brave face. "Work hard, Martin," he'd say, his voice a mix of pride and weariness. "That's the only way out of this." School was an escape of sorts, though it was more of a sanctuary from the monotony than a place of academic success. My teachers saw potential in me, but the gaps in my attendance and the occasional need to skip classes to help my parents with extra shifts held me back. I often found myself daydreaming of a different life while cleaning tables at the diner or delivering newspapers in the rain. One evening, while mopping the floor of a conference room in the office building where I worked as a janitor, I noticed something strange: a small, leather-bound book left carelessly on a polished mahogany table. Curious, I picked it up and examined the cover. It was titled From Grit to Glory: The Journey of John O'Brien. The book was well-worn, its cover scuffed and pages slightly yellowed. I could see it had been read and reread, and it was clearly valued by someone. When I took the book home, I sat down at our small kitchen table, the only light coming from a single bulb hanging overhead. As I opened the book, a sense of anticipation tingled through me. I began to read, and the words seemed to leap off the page. John O'Brien's story was one of struggle, failure, and eventual triumph. He had come from modest beginnings, faced countless setbacks, and yet, he had managed to build a successful business empire. His resilience and resourcefulness were laid bare in each chapter, and for the first time, I felt a spark of hope ignite within me. Later that evening, after I had read a few chapters, my mother came into the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "What's got you so engrossed, Martin?" she asked, peering at the book with a mixture of curiosity and concern. I looked up from the pages, my eyes shining with excitement. "Mom, this book is incredible. It's about this guy, John O'Brien, who came from nothing and made a huge success of himself. It's like he's speaking directly to me." She raised an eyebrow, her expression a blend of skepticism and curiosity. "Is that so? You know how hard it is to make it out there. You've got to be practical." I nodded, trying to suppress my enthusiasm. "I know, but this book, his story, it's different. It makes me believe that maybe, just maybe, things can change if I work hard enough." A soft smile tugged at her lips. "Well, if it gives you hope, that's not a bad thing. Just make sure you keep your feet on the ground and your eyes open." That night, as I lay in bed, I found it hard to sleep. O'Brien's words echoed in my mind, and I felt a newfound determination stirring within me. It wasn't just about dreaming anymore, it was about taking action. The next day at work, I was still buzzing with energy when I came across a colleague, Mike, while emptying trash cans. He was leaning against a desk, chatting with a few others about the latest sports scores. Seeing me approach, he raised an eyebrow. "Hey, Martin, you look like you've got something on your mind. What's up?" I couldn't contain my excitement. "I found this book, and it's really inspiring. It's about a guy who started with nothing and became successful. I think it's going to change my life." Mike chuckled, shaking his head. "You and your books. But hey, if it makes you feel better, more power to you. Just remember, talk's cheap. It's the action that counts." His words were laced with a hint of skepticism, but I took them to heart. Action was what I needed, and that was what I was prepared to take. Each day, as I scrubbed floors and emptied trash cans, the book's lessons lingered in my mind, pushing me to strive for something more. It wasn't long before I decided to attend an event where John O'Brien was speaking. The night before, I could barely contain my excitement. The possibility of meeting the man who had inspired me so profoundly was a dream come true. It was a small but significant step toward my aspirations, and I felt like I was on the verge of something transformative. The journey from the darkness of my circumstances to the light of hope had begun, and I was ready to take the next step toward making that hope a reality. The day of the event was one of those rare moments when everything felt perfect. I had managed to scrape together enough money to buy a ticket to see John O'Brien speak at a downtown conference hall, and the anticipation buzzing inside me was electric. The grandiosity of the venue was a stark contrast to the dingy corners of my neighborhood. The chandeliers sparkled like 1,000 tiny stars, and the soft hum of conversation filled the air. I arrived early, eager to get a good seat. The crowd was diverse: business professionals in sharp suits, aspiring entrepreneurs, and a handful of students, each with their own hopes and dreams. As I waited for the event to start, I couldn't help but feel a mix of nervousness and exhilaration. The idea of meeting John O'Brien, the man whose words had transformed my outlook, was almost surreal. When the lights dimmed and John O'Brien took the stage, the room fell into a reverent silence. He spoke with a passion that was both inspiring and reassuring. His tales of adversity and perseverance struck a chord with me, reminding me of the countless nights I had spent dreaming of a better future. After his speech, there was an opportunity for attendees to take a picture with him. I joined the line, heart racing with excitement. I couldn't wait to tell him how much his book had impacted my life. When it was finally my turn, I approached the podium with a mixture of nervousness and eagerness. "Mr. O'Brien," I said, extending my hand. "Thank you so much for your book. It's been a real source of inspiration for me." He shook my hand warmly, his smile genuine. "I'm glad to hear that. Keep working hard and never lose sight of your dreams." The photographer snapped the picture, and I felt a rush of exhilaration. Holding on to that moment, I stepped away, but the fleeting sense of joy was short-lived. As I was leaving the venue, I was approached by Andrew Hansen, a wealthy businessman I had seen earlier mingling with the crowd. Hansen's presence was commanding. He wore a tailored suit and exuded an air of arrogance. He sneered as he saw me. "Look at you," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. "A janitor, mingling with the elite. Did you really think a picture with O'Brien would change your station in life?" I was taken aback, my heart sinking as his words cut through my euphoria. I tried to muster a response, but the sting of his ridicule left me speechless. "Get real," Hansen continued, his eyes narrowing. "You're nothing but a cleaner. People like you don't belong in places like this." I turned away, my cheeks burning with humiliation. I just wanted to escape, but the damage had already been done. I left the venue feeling defeated, and the weight of Hansen's words lingered like a shadow. The next morning, as I mopped the office floors, my manager, Mr. Wilson, approached me with a grim expression. He was a stocky man with a no-nonsense attitude, and I could tell by his demeanor that something was wrong. "Martin," he began, "I need to talk to you." We walked into his office, and he shut the door behind us. I stood silently, apprehensive. "I received a complaint about you from a very important client, Andrew Hansen," Mr. Wilson said. "He said you were out of place at the event and that you were trying to use your position here to gain access to elite circles." My stomach dropped. "But that's not true. I was just taking a photo with John O'Brien. It meant a lot to me." Mr. Wilson's face was impassive. "I understand, but Hansen has influence, and his complaints carry weight. I'm afraid I have to let you go." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from beneath me. My voice trembled as I tried to speak. "But I've worked hard here. I just wanted to." "I'm sorry, Martin," Mr. Wilson interrupted, his tone firm. "There's nothing I can do. You're dismissed." I left the office, my heart heavy with despair. As I packed up my belongings, I couldn't help but replay Hansen's words in my mind. I had allowed a single moment of triumph to be overshadowed by one man's scorn, and now I was paying the price. The days that followed were a blur of frustration and self-doubt. I had invested so much hope into that moment, only to see it crumble. But amidst the despair, John O'Brien's book still held a glimmer of light. I couldn't let this setback define me. I knew I had to make a choice: let this defeat end my dreams or use it as fuel to drive me forward. Determined to turn things around, I enrolled in a computer repair course. It was a new direction, but it offered a chance to build something of my own. I remembered the words of the book, the emphasis on resilience and resourcefulness. If John O'Brien could overcome his obstacles, then so could I. As I sat in the dimly lit classroom, surrounded by the hum of old computers and the rustle of notes, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to walk it, no matter how daunting it seemed. Andrew Hansen's scorn had not only taken my job but also made me realize that my journey was far from over. It was just beginning. In the months following my dismissal, I threw myself into the computer repair course with an intensity that bordered on obsession. The coursework was demanding, with complex systems and technical jargon that seemed alien at first. But each challenge was a step toward the future I was determined to create. I remembered John O'Brien's advice about persistence, and I clung to it like a lifeline. The classroom was a far cry from the office building where I had once worked. It was a cramped, windowless room filled with outdated computers and buzzing fluorescent lights. Despite the mundane surroundings, the sense of possibility was palpable. My instructor, Mr. Ramirez, was a grizzled technician with a no-nonsense demeanor but a passion for teaching that was contagious. One afternoon, as we worked on troubleshooting a particularly stubborn PC, Mr. Ramirez noticed my concentration. He walked over and peered over my shoulder. "You seem to be getting the hang of this," he said, nodding at the computer screen. "You've got a knack for it." I looked up, wiping sweat from my brow. "Thanks. I'm just trying to make up for lost time. I've had a lot of setbacks." He raised an eyebrow. "Everyone hits roadblocks. It's how you handle them that counts. If you keep this up, you'll do just fine." His words were a small but important encouragement. The course ended with me earning my certification, a tangible symbol of my hard work and perseverance. With my newfound skills and certification, I decided to start small, repairing computers for friends and family. I quickly learned that word of mouth was a powerful tool. Soon, I had a steady stream of clients, and what started as a side gig became a full-fledged business. I rented a tiny storefront in a less trafficked part of town, a modest beginning but a significant step. The shop was small, with just enough room for a few workstations and a counter. I named it Bright Tech Solutions, inspired by the hope that had illuminated my path. I spent long hours there, fixing computers, answering calls, and handling customer complaints, all tasks that came with their own set of challenges. One evening, as I was closing up the shop, Sarah, a young woman who had been one of my first clients, walked in. She was carrying an old laptop, her face a mixture of frustration and hope. "Martin, my laptop's acting up again," she said, placing the device on the counter. "I don't know what I'd do without you." I took the laptop and began examining it. "Don't worry, Sarah. I'll have it running smoothly in no time." As I worked on the laptop, Sarah struck up a conversation. "You know, your shop's becoming quite popular. I hear people talking about you all the time." I smiled. "I've been working hard. Every client, every repair is a step toward building something bigger." She leaned in, her expression thoughtful. "You've come a long way since those early days. I remember you were just starting out, and now it's like you're running a whole operation." It was gratifying to hear her words. I knew that my hard work was paying off, but it was nice to have it acknowledged by someone who had seen my journey firsthand. Months turned into years, and Bright Tech Solutions expanded beyond my initial expectations. I hired a couple of assistants to help manage the increasing workload, and soon I was able to open a second location. We offered a range of services, from basic repairs to more complex IT solutions, and the franchise grew steadily. It felt like a dream come true, but it was a dream built on the foundations of hard work and resilience. One day, while reviewing applications for a new delivery driver position, I came across a familiar name, Andrew Hansen. The name struck me like a bolt of lightning. I hadn't thought about him in years, but the memory of that humiliating encounter at the event remained vivid. Curiosity got the better of me, so I scheduled an interview. When Andrew walked into my office, he was a shadow of the man I remembered. His suit was worn and frayed, and he looked considerably older and more tired. The once confident swagger was gone, replaced by a look of weariness. "Mr. Hanson," I began, extending my hand, "please have a seat." He sat down, shifting uncomfortably. "Martin, I didn't expect to be here. I've fallen on hard times. My business collapsed, and now I'm looking for any kind of work." I studied him, feeling a mixture of empathy and lingering hurt. "I remember you from that event years ago. You said some things that were hard to forget." Andrew's face flushed with shame. "I was arrogant and wrong. I've had to face the consequences of my actions, and it hasn't been easy. I'm sorry for what I said. I understand if you don't want to help me." I took a deep breath, reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this point. The bitterness I once felt had faded, replaced by a sense of understanding. Everyone deserves a second chance. "You're hired." Andrew's eyes widened in surprise. "Really? Thank you. I won't let you down." He stood up, shaking my hand with a newfound respect. "I appreciate this more than you know. I'll do my best to earn this opportunity." As he left the office, I felt a profound sense of closure. Life had a way of balancing itself, and in offering Andrew a chance, I was reminded of the importance of empathy and forgiveness. Despite the setbacks and struggles, I had learned that respect and compassion were more powerful than any grudge. The path from the ashes of my past to the success I had achieved was not just about personal triumph but also about the values I had embraced along the way. And as Andrew walked out into the world with a renewed sense of purpose, I knew that this was just one more step in the journey of life, one that was ever-changing and full of unexpected turns. If you like this story, please subscribe, like, click the bell, and leave a comment. Thank you in advance.